In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Christ is in our midst. So you just heard the gospel reading of the demoniac, and I wanted to just kind of make you for a moment close your eyes and think, not close your eyes for the next, however many minutes and go off into the distance thinking and dreaming about the Cubs, but to think about what this must have been like when Christ is walking in to this town called the Gerasenes, and he walks in and he's walking along the road, and this naked, crazy man comes up to him. I mean, just think of that for a second. This man was wild. He was crazy, as they would coin, but we knew he was possessed. I mean, we hear that specifically in the story. But he was naked. He was strong, because we hear that he was chained, and many of the icons that depict this miracle have a couple things, because there was also another man who was possessed that we hear in the Gospel of Matthew, but this particular rendition of this gospel just speaks about this one man's experience. But we see that they were chained, and they broke the chains, and they lived in the tombs where all the dead were, that people would go and pray for them, and then they would encounter these wild and terrible demoniacs there. So you can imagine coming with Christ and seeing all these things, and then seeing this demoniac, this man completely possessed, out of his mind, crazed, strong, and completely naked, running up to Christ. I can't imagine what the disciples were thinking when they saw that. But then the man says something extraordinary in the way of this confession, but the demons always would proclaim Christ as the Son of God. He says, "Why did you come here? Did you come here to torment me? Did you come here to make my life miserable, more miserable than what it already is?" So we see that the man is speaking, and then we hear later in the story that the demons speak too. The demons say, "If you're going to get rid of us, send us into the swine, send us into the pigs." So we see that something is unique and something that we have to understand in this gospel reading about those who are completely lost in the influence of sin and evil, and those whom we would even consider possessed, is that the voice switches. The voice switches from the man to the demons, and then ultimately, when the demons are gone, back to the man. But the man there's another icon of this particular encounter with Christ, and the demon is shown behind the man, just working his hands and moving him. And it's a very intense icon to look at, because you see that the man looks like he's a zombie. He's just standing there. His eyes are kind of gazed into nowhere, and this demon is behind him, working him as a puppet, as the demons and the devil tries to do with all of us, to get us to be his puppet. But you see this man comes to Christ, and Christ says, "What is your name?" As he, you think all the questions that we probably would have asked or said, or all the comments we would have said, Christ says, "What's your name?" So immediately, Christ makes this a personal encounter. This crazy man coming up to him, yelling, "What are you doing here?" And Christ says, "What's your name?" Just kind of just deflates the whole situation right there. The man says, "Legion." Now we hear that the demons are speaking through the man now. Because before it was, "Don't torment me." Now it's legion. Now what is a legion? A legion is a group of soldiers in the Roman understanding, which went from anywhere from like 1,000 soldiers to 6,000 soldiers. So when the man says this, the voice of the demons come through, it says legion. And then what does the gospel say? That it was said legion because he had not just one demon, he had many demons. Now, what are the many demons? Well, the many demons he had are kind of what we see in society and what we wrestle with too. What are the demons? I mean, is it just one that bothers a person? Or is it a lot? I mean, can you die from one paper cut? Depends on where it is, I guess, and how deep it is. But there's that saying, you die from 1,000 paper cuts. Well, one little demon, you might say, so what if I do this? Big deal. I don't do this. But what if you do that, this, that, and it adds up, and then all of a sudden we realize we're not in control of our lives anymore, like this crazy demoniac in the story, that he had so many different issues, so many inabilities or disabilities to come to know God and to come to experience God in the goodness of his life, that he completely took a different track, and he became a maniac. He became a wild man, and he became one who was far from being in control of his own life. So we see that his name is Legion, which anywhere from 1,000 to 6,000, right? So let's go on the low end. Let's say 1,000. Now, you have to ask yourself, if the Jews did not eat pork, right? We kind of know that in the book of Leviticus. It says specifically that the Jewish people were not to eat pork because it was a hoofed animal. So if the Jews weren't supposed to eat pork, who is raising pigs? Who's taking care of the pigs? And why would they actually have pigs in a herd where Jesus was? And we learn that the Roman soldiers, that's what they ate. And the Roman, the leaders of Rome and the areas and the different rulers of the different towns and the governors, and they took land on the outskirts, and they had these farms where they raised meat and cattle or pigs in this instance, whatever the livestock was, sheep, whatever it was, to slaughter for the soldiers. So the soldiers were the ones that were eating all this pork. I mean, we may never think, well, what's the big deal with pork? But they didn't eat it. The Jews did not eat it. So the Romans were the ones who were out in these fields, and the shepherds. But which is also what gives us an insight when you look and say, why were they scared and why did they chase him away? Why did the Jews say, why did Christ say to this man, specific, go and tell how much Christ, God has done for you? And then the others were saying, this is amazing, go tell. And then all of a sudden we hear the shepherds come back and they say, get out of here. Why? Because they were the Romans. And we know that, yes, there was probably some Jews in that group too, but we see that it was probably, what is going on here? Our livestock just went off. This man just killed our livestock. We have to go report this. We have to go tell that all our pigs just jumped into the water and died because this man, who's a prophet or whatever his deal is, whatever they were thinking, just sent all our cattle over the hill into the water. Now they're all dead. What am I going to tell? I mean, that would be death for someone who was a shepherd for the Roman army. So they go back and say, this is what happened. Another shepherd says, yes, this is what happened. They can reassure the story. Tell him to get out. So Jesus leaves because they were afraid. They were probably angry, and they didn't understand. And there is not one thing that says that they believed. It just says they were in fear, and they chased him away. So we see that even the name of Legion, is a Roman term. It's not a Jewish term, but it was signifying this army of demons was in this man by this Roman army who had their pigs there. So Christ casts the demons into the pigs. Now, your question that you may or may not have is, why did Christ listen to the demons? Why did he take their, asking? Why? It's because it's a critical thing to understand that he didn't say, well, the demons are in charge, but the demons had to ask. This is important for all of us. Had to ask even to be let into the pigs. They couldn't just go. They couldn't just leave this man. They had to ask to go into this lower life form and say, please don't torment us. Don't send us into the abyss. Send us into this swine and we'll kill ourselves and we'll go back to wherever. But they ask him to go into these pigs. which is a reminder for us that it's not just happenstance that a person becomes possessed. It's not happenstance that a person becomes led by these torments in their life. They have to welcome it in. They have to open the door for it. It's not like you can just sit in church, say your prayers, walk out, and all of a sudden a demon jumps in you and now you're out of your mind. It doesn't work that way. And we see that it doesn't work that way because of specifically the way this gospel states that the demons had to ask to go into the swine. But they were given that request because God says, through Christ, Christ says to them, you can go into the swine, because not out of mercy, but to show that the demons are subject to him. They understood exactly what it was. They understood he could destroy them, he could torment them. He just says, go, and that's it. And the swine, as we know, jump off the cliff, go into the water, and drown. We also see, too, that in this whole of this gospel, that what were these men doing before? And that is kind of a missing element in the story. And maybe it's not important for us to know what did they do to get that many demons? What did they, he was on drugs or something. Ripping the chains apart. Where did those chains come from? Did they come from the Jews? Absolutely not. Did the Jews have chains? Did they have the ability to lock up anybody? No. It was the Romans, right? If the Jews had chains, they would have had their own system of governing. They would have had their own system of incarceration. They didn't. They went to Rome and to the soldiers and to the governor and said, this is what you have to do. Look at Christ himself. Did the Jews arrest him? Did they take him and bind him? No, the Romans did. So even the Romans saw these demoniacs as people that needed to be put away. What did they do before? And the answer to that question is, we don't know. But whatever they did it one paper cut, spiritual paper cut at a time. And it added up to so much that at the end, we see that that particular man that's spoken to, doesn't even have a grasp of how much he is off, how far away he is from God. And we see at the end of the story that after the demons come out, where's the man? He's sitting at the feet of Christ, clothed, he has clothing on, and in his right mind. In other words, he is back. Wherever he was, he's back. And then he asks, can I follow you? Can I come after you? Now, they're already telling Jesus to get out, to go away, get out of here. And Jesus says, I'm going to go. I'm not going to get into it. This is not the end-all, be-all of things. I have other things I have to do, so I'm going to go. But he tells the man, where we think that Christ can actually come across as being, we may think this, that Christ could say to him, you can't follow me. You were a demoniac, you can't follow me. Does he do that? No. He actually sends him out as what? An apostle. Not that the man was considered an apostle, but he sends him out, which is the word apostle translated into English. He sends him out and says, go into your town, and go say how much God has done for you. You go spread the word, because they don't want me here. You go tell them. You go tell them by your story. They saw you. The people who went to the cemetery saw you there. The Romans incarcerated you and you broke the chains. You scared people. You were running around naked and out of your mind and screaming at people, yelling and saying foul things. And now you go and show them. Because what better thing? Christ, it seems like, well, I'm out of here and forget the guy, forget this town. But what does he give them? He gives them something that they completely understand, because they didn't understand who he was. When Christ was there, they said, get out. We're scared of you. Get out of here. But the man, who they didn't cast out completely of the city, is now there and preaching and talking about what God has done for him. What a beautiful return back to his own community. So it's not that the man, because he was broken, is unable to follow God. It's God gave him this charge to go speak to your own people and tell them, convert them, show them who you are. And in that, they will continue to learn and to grow in knowing who Christ is. So what's kind of the meat and potatoes for us today? Number one, it doesn't matter where we were, it matters where we are. And it matters where we're going. So take this demoniac. If your life was an absolute mess before, and you come to have those things removed from you by God's grace, by the forgiveness of the church, by the sacrament of confession, by the sacraments themselves and the life in the church, and you are now moving in the path of God, don't think that that makes you less than if you hadn't done that. It matters where you are. Look at St. Paul. St. Paul was a persecutor of Christians. He converts. He doesn't look back. He just keeps going forward and becomes one of the great saints of Christianity. So wherever you were, you may need to make it right, but wherever you are now is important to understand that it's a time to grow. It's a time to push the old away and not to cling on to the negative of the past. This gospel reading is also a reminder to us we have to be very careful as to what we are doing and how many times we are allowing things in and how many different things we are allowing into our life. You know, someone who smokes once may say, oh yeah, I smoked once and, you know, I stopped. Somebody may smoke for 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever. But then I talked to someone recently who is fighting cancer, and they said, it's because I smoked. I smoked all these years, and now it has got me. And they went in for surgery, and after the surgery, when they got out of the hospital, you know what they did? They did not quit smoking. They went back to smoking. And I thought, well, isn't that kind of the surgery helped you, and now you can kind of, and they said, well, I've been doing it my whole life, and I got this far. So we have to be very careful that we don't accept things and say, well, if I do this once or twice, it's really not going to hurt me. Because any poison that we bring into our lives, and I'm not just talking about smoking, I'm talking about the whole of our disposition, the whole of our ethical life, the whole of our prayer life. Anything we let in and continually let in is going to just stack up, and it's going to get more and more. And then it opens the doors to other things, other abuses. And those other abuses can come so much that we look, and have you ever seen someone in your life that you've encountered, and you look at them and they've changed, right? They're doing other things, and you say, I don't even recognize them anymore. Have you ever had someone like that? I'm sure you have somewhere along the line. You say, I don't even know who they are anymore because they've been so distorted by the things that they're doing. And the other thing to remember, too, is that the only way we can lose track of our spiritual lives is to open the door to the garbage. Open the door to temptation, open the door to sin, and say, just come on in. Because if we don't open that door and we fight in prayer, we fight in fasting, we fight in the sacramental life of the church, nothing will overcome you except God's grace. Because the swine were there and the demons said, send us into them because you have to do that. We can't do it on our own. We can't just leave. We were welcomed into this man, by this man, whatever he was doing. And now to go, we need permission to go. That's kind of a scary thing when you think about it, too. The permission to go. So when someone latches on, they can't just go. They need permission by Christ to go. What's the permission we have today? We have the permission in the sacrament of confession. That's the permission from God to say, whatever you have, it's gone. It's through that sacrament, not through our own standing in front of an icon and saying, God, make it go, but through the sacrament of confession, that goes away and that we become in our right mind, clothed with grace, and sitting at the feet of God, listening to his teachings. So this gospel reading today has so many different aspects to it, but I wanted you to think about some of these things so that as you go through your life, remember what you welcome in is what you have. And St. Paisios had said once, and I've said this before, he says, no matter how clean you have your house, if you open the door and let a pig run through your house, it's very appropriate, he said a pig, you let a pig run through your house and it runs in, goes and runs out, your house is going to smell like pig, right? I mean, as Greeks, how many times you walk into a house and you smell something cooking, you smell the onions or whatever the soup is or whatever the meat is cooking or whatever. I mean, you can drive down Fifth Avenue on the first weekend of November and you smell what? You smell the grill, right, from the festival. You come in 3 weeks after the festival and sit in my office. You know what it smells like? It smells like a 5-gallon bucket of grease from the Yito machines. That's what my office smells like for weeks afterwards. It's good for the first day, and then after that, you're kind of sick of it, right? And everyone who knows, who works at the festival, how many of you get undressed in your garages? Right? You have another study. Some of you are laughing because you know exactly what I'm talking. You leave here, you get in your car, and you can't take it into the house. In fact, some of your spouses have put a mandate on the garage door that says, change before you come in. So we know that things can stick to us, but we have to make sure in our spiritual lives that we push those things off and we make sure we don't open the door for the negative to come into our life, but we always open the door to God and ask for forgiveness, ask for His grace, and ask for His guidance in our lives always. Amen.